This is Luke from Emo Electric, and we're here today to talk about the Torqeedo Travel S. We sell these in our online store. We're going to test these out on a Further Customs Laguna 290 inflatable catamaran today. So we'll do some speed and runtime data on the water. We'll run you through the features here. If you have any questions on anything we talk about in this video, leave a comment below. I'll be the one to reply to you. And if you have questions beyond that, feel free to give us a call, send us an email, and we'll do what we can to help you out. So this motor here was released in 2024. It's Torqeedo's newest version of their Travel, which is their flagship motor. They were the first company to make a portable electric outboard with a battery that fits right on top of the shaft there. And they've added a ton of great features to this new version. So as a little bit of an overview, it's a 1 kilowatt motor with a battery capacity of 1,080 watt hours. So we get just a little bit less than an hour of runtime at full throttle typically, but we'll test all that out on the water in a little bit more depth shortly. This motor retails for just about $3,000 for the short shaft and $3,050 for the long shaft, at least at the time of this filming. Prices could certainly change. And that gets you the battery, the standard battery, the motor, kill switch, propeller, aluminum anode, and the standard charger. And there's a couple other extras from there. So there's a number of upgrades that Torqeedo has made to this motor compared to the old 1103. We've got another video on that where we talk about it in depth and compare them side by side. So we'll link that here. But just to kind of run you through that briefly, one of the best features from this new motor is the fact that there's no more cables connecting the battery to the motor. So taking the battery on and off is quite easy. You just slide it back, tilt it up a little bit, and then it pops right off. And you can see that there's a port on the battery and a port on the motor. And that's what makes the data and power connection. I really like how there's this cap to help keep those connections clean and corrosion free. Putting the battery back on, it's just as easy. Another nice upgrade Torqeedo made was your ability to change the steering friction and steering lock. So there's two Allen head machine screws back there that you can tighten and loosen that will change your steering friction. This can be nice because you can tighten it up enough so that when you take your hand off the tiller, the motor stays straight. So that's a really nice feature, especially for sailors. In the old version of this motor, there was a pin you'd put in under the battery that would lock the steering centered, but now there's a lever on the aft end of the shaft here that serves the same function. So right now we're on that middle setting, which makes it so we can only turn the motor 60 degrees either way. And that's useful because if we raise the motor up, because of the weight of the battery, it wants to turn down to the side. But because we have it locked at 60 degrees, this can't swing down and hit your transom. If we raise this all the way to the top there, now our motor is locked centered. So again, really nice, useful feature for sailors. So you can keep this motor straight and use your sailboat spreader to steer. And then finally, if that's all the way to the bottom, we can spin this motor around. So I have the kill switch off, 360 degrees. So typically you'll just run it on that kind of 60 degree setting, but it's nice to have those options there. Another great feature kind of related to all that is the fact that Torqeedo has added multiple tilt and trim angles to this motor. So right now our motor is all the way down, but it's unlocked. So when this lever is down, the motor is locked down. So you need to have it like that if you're going to be using reverse. But if you're in shallow water, you can raise this lever up, slide it back, and now if you were to run aground, the motor can pop up. But beyond that, we have these multiple tilt trim angles. So if you're in shallow water, you can raise your motor up just a little bit more. Now we're probably starting to get out of the water. And not only are there those shallow water angles, but all the way up is 90 degrees. So even if you have an angled transom, you'll be able to get this pylon all the way out of the water, which is not the case with some other electric outboards. Now getting into the tiller and the display here, we'll power the motor on. One of the nice things about the tiller is that it's now built in. The older version, it was not. You can raise this all the way up. You can have it in the middle and it will stay there. You can also adjust the friction of the tiller by adjusting this screw here. So that way the tiller will stay in this position. It won't just fall back down. And then if we push this lever there, we can fold that tiller all the way down. And if this wasn't on the stand, it would come down truly 90 degrees, which just keeps it out of the way and makes it easier to move this motor around. Then finally, the display itself here is much richer than the older version. We'll show you this again on the water, but there's a few different modes here where you can, kind of pick the one that you like. This one's my favorite. We get our speed, our state of charge, our RPMs, our power output in watts, and then our range in both nautical miles and minutes. All right, so now we're going to show you how you can mount this on the transom of a dinghy, and then we'll get out on the water and do a little testing. So let's do it. All right, so we're getting ready to put the Travel S onto our Laguna 290. It's going to take a minute to tell you a little bit about this boat. We'll have a full review on it coming soon, but we recently signed on as a dealer for Further Customs. They make the Laguna catamaran and then all these awesome inflatable docks and chairs and other accessories like that, paddle boards. And we set this boat up for the first time a couple weeks ago, and I was really impressed. I spent years working on yachts and super yachts, and I've messed around with a lot of these small dinghies, and I'm really impressed by this one. It was easy to set up. It has this inflatable floor. I used a battery-operated kite pump. It took me less than 10 minutes. There's 2 chambers in each side here, and then the air floor. So you inflate the 2 sides, you put the floor in, pump it up, and you're good to go. It's way easier than messing around with a marine plywood floor or an aluminum floor. Those things are always a nightmare. A few other great things about this boat: comes stock with a bimini out of the gate. We don't have it on today because it's a little overcast, but you get that when you purchase this boat. And lots of other little extras like a bag, a pump, all the things that you usually have to buy in addition to the boat itself come stock with the Laguna. This is the 290. It's a 9.5-foot version. Most people will go with the 330, which is an 11-foot version. All right, so now we'll show you how we can mount the Travel S to the stern of our dinghy here. One of the great things about these electric outboards is their weight. The Travel S in total weighs about 44.5 pounds in short shaft. So you might be thinking, well, it's about the same as my 4-stroke, which is true. The total weight is relatively similar to a 4-stroke gas outboard, but the difference is you never need to handle all of that weight at the same time. So the shaft itself weighs 25.5 pounds and the battery is about 19 pounds. So the heaviest thing you're dealing with is 25.5 pounds. And that makes all the difference in the world. So to get this mounted up, we're gonna pick it up. Torqeedo added this nice handle here that you can grab and carry the motor from. So we're gonna bring it over to the stern of our boat. We're gonna flip the tiller up. And then we're gonna drop this down. Center it on our transom. And then tighten up our transom bolts here. All right, and then when it comes to mounting the battery, it's nice to have the motor on the mode where you can spin it all the way around. That way you're not hanging over the stern of your boat when you go to mount it. So we're gonna take our little cap off the connector there, grab our battery, and it pops right in. So we're going to spin our motor back around. Now I will bring it on to the setting where the motor can only turn 60 degrees. And again, that's so when I pull it up, the motor doesn't, or the battery doesn't swing all the way down. You can also see it's nice to be able to move the tiller up, right? If the tiller were straight, it would hit the side of the dinghy there. But because it can easily come up and will stay like that, it's out of the way and not hitting the side of the boat there. So we'll put this back down. One other thing worth mentioning here is adjusting the trim of the motor when it's all the way down. So if you look here, you see there's 4 holes for this pin. And since this transom is angled aft a little bit, we moved that pin from the very bottom hole one up, and that way the motor should be, or the prop should be kind of perpendicular to the water line. All right, if it were all the way down, it would be kind of too far down. So you have to adjust that trim pin once for your boat, and then you're good to go. So the first thing we're going to do out on the water is answer one of the most common questions we get about this motor, which is how long does the battery last? So in Torqeedo's testing data, it's between 50 minutes and an hour, depending on what type of boat at full throttle. And we're going to see what we get here on the Laguna 290. So we've got 97% battery. We're going to bump this up to full power. Keep in mind we've got 2 adults in this 9.5-foot catamaran style dinghy. We are going into the wind, probably about 6-7 knots of breeze right now, maybe a little bit less. So right now we're at 4.3 knots, and it looks like we've got just about an hour of runtime. So that's even a little bit better. Oh, now 57, a little bit better than what Torqeedo says, 55. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for that to settle in. But if it's anywhere between that 50 minutes and an hour, that's quite close to what Torqeedo says. And the way that they get those numbers theoretically is you have a 1.1 kilowatt hour motor and a 1,080 watt hour battery. So if you divide those numbers, you get just under a full hour of runtime. So that's at full power. I think our max speed was about 4.3 knots. Now we're going to try that at about 75% power output. And this is the sweet spot for most people who are using one of these motors, where the difference kind of between full power and 3/4 power in terms of speed is marginal, but you typically get a lot more runtime. So we are at 760 watts. That's our power output in the bottom left. So we're just about 75% power, maybe slightly less. Our runtime has jumped up to an hour and 21 minutes. And we've only lost about half a knot, right? We're doing about 3.8, 3.9 knots now. We can see we have a 5 nautical mile range as well. So what's nice about this is it gives you your runtime not only in minutes, but also miles. I think it's really handy to have both. Personally, I find that minutes and hours is a lot more useful than miles when you're in a boat like this, but it's nice that you have both options with the travel. So now we're going to bump our speed down a little bit to about 50% throttle. So we're at 540 watts, 550 would be 50%. And our speed has barely even changed here. So now we're doing 3.6 knots. And our runtime looks like it's jumped up to about an hour and 35 minutes. And about 6 nautical miles of runtime. Keep in mind that this computer is calculating that runtime data with its GPS, right? So it's getting our speed, and then it's calculating its runtime from there. So it does take a little bit of time for that to settle in. I think now we're up to an hour and 41 minutes, 6 nautical mile range, and that's a little bit more accurate than what I just said a couple seconds ago. So finally, we're going to go down to 25% throttle. So there we go. We're at about 290 watts. So that's just over 25%. This time we're going to be a little bit more patient and let the boat kind of settle into this speed before we start talking about our range. So now we're up to 8 nautical miles. We're doing 3 knots. And we've got almost 3 hours of runtime. It's like 2 hours and 53 minutes. So, and we are down to 93% battery, right? So at 100%, it would just be a little bit more than that. So that's a really good illustration of runtime and electric outboards. Everybody seems to get hung up on the fact that on the top speed range. And the reality with one of these motors is that you're not often running at top speed. Sometimes you might be, but if speed is your #1 priority, you probably shouldn't get an electric outboard. Gas is the way to go if that's the case for most people, especially if you're on a planing dinghy. But if you aren't too concerned with your high-end speed and you're usually going at slower speeds, you can throttle down and get a lot more runtime out of these motors. So we encourage you, if you are thinking about going electric, don't only look at that full speed number, look at the full chart and see what the speed and range is like at 75, 50, or even 25% throttle. Speaking of range, if you need more range than what you would get out of the standard battery with the Torqeedo Travel S, you have a couple options. You can either buy a second standard travel battery, so that doubles your runtime, or you can buy the Travel Battery XP. So Torqeedo also makes the Travel XP. It's almost a carbon copy of the Travel S, but it has a higher capacity battery, and it's a 1.6 kilowatt motor instead of a 1.1 kilowatt motor. So they say it's about 5 horsepower compared to 3. And those batteries are interchangeable for the Travel S. So you can use the Travel XP battery with the Travel S, and that gives you about 40% more runtime. 1,080 watt hours versus 1,425 watt hours. So if you're a little bit concerned about range out the gate with the Travel S, we recommend buying the XP battery with the Travel S shaft. And then if you realize later on that you need more range, you can always buy an additional battery, either one later on. It is important to note that those are the only 2 batteries that are compatible with the Travel S. You cannot use third-party batteries with Torqeedo Travel outboards. So we want to show you a little bit more about the display on the Travel here. This is the richest display of any small electric outboard that's on the market in the US today. You can see on this setting, we have our speed in knots. We're doing 3.3 knots. We've got 91% state of charge, about 864 RPMs, 290 watts. And then we see our range in nautical miles and hours and minutes. So at this speed, which is about 25% throttle, you can go for 11 miles or 3 hours and 14 minutes. This is my preferred display, but there's a few options. If you press that arrow, you get this version, which shows you your power output in watts in the center, RPMs in the bottom right, and then same speed and state of charge towards the top there. And then, that's back to where we started. This is the other one that gives you speed in knots in the center, and then we get power output in watts in the bottom left, RPMs in the bottom right, and state of charge up top there. So I like that first screen the best because it gives you your range, which I think, the range is like kind of the biggest highlighted numbers on there, which to most people is the most important, but it's nice to be able to cycle through there. If you haven't seen how these kill switches work before, we'll show you. Once that pops off the motor will turn off. When you put the kill switch back on, the motor won't turn on right away because this throttle is still turned in forward. So you have to bring it back to neutral to reset it, and then you'll start moving again. So pretty much all the electric outboards we sell have these nice little magnetic kill switches. They're much easier to put on and off compared to the kill switches for gas motors. We'll show you how that tilt trim works now that we're on the boat. So if I was getting into shallow water here, I'd lift that up. And that's probably the highest I can go. The prop's a little bit out of the water. Yeah, a little too high there. So we'll go down to the next setting. And now we can cruise along even if we are in shallow water. So it's a really nice feature of the Travel S. Surprisingly, not all electric outboards have that shallow water tilt angle. All right, so a few other notes before we wrap up here. One of which is on the control for this motor. So the Travel S comes stock in the tiller version. You can't get the remote version out of the gate with the Travel S, whereas with the XP you can. But if you did want to hook this motor up to a steering wheel, you'd buy the Travel S, buy Torqeedo's remote kit, this tiller comes off, and then in that kit is kind of the hardware you need here to hook up a standard like Teleflex steering line to this motor. And then you have a TorqueLink throttle that has a wired connection from the throttle to the motor and allows you to control your speed from the throttle instead of the tiller. So most people are using the tiller version of this motor, but if you do want to go that route, it is an option. Another thing you'll need to think about when you're buying one of these motors is what shaft length you need. These come in short shaft or long shaft. Most dinghies like this will need the short shaft, and it's typically sailboats that need the long shaft, but you want to measure to make sure. So on this boat, we'd measure the height of our transom from right here down to the bottom of the hull. What Torqeedo says is that the short shaft is ideal for about a 15-inch transom and the long for about a 20-inch transom. If you're on a sailboat, it's a little bit trickier. If you have questions about measuring shaft length, leave a comment below, and we'll be happy to help you out there. And one other thing to consider is the charging options. So the Travel S comes with your standard AC charger. It takes about 6 hours to charge this battery. Kind of looks like a laptop charger. Just plugs into a regular wall outlet. But then Torqeedo also makes a solar charging cable and a 12-volt charging cable. So those are relatively inexpensive. They're about $7,500. And that allows you to charge this battery with 12 volt or a solar panel up to 400 watts, I believe. So that's really nice because if you have an array on your boat and you're a cruising sailor, you can hook it up so you can kind of switch those panels to charging this battery. And with 400 watts of solar, you could charge this battery pretty quickly. 400 watts is perfectly efficient. It would only take you about 2.5 hours to charge this battery up with that much solar. Of course, if you aren't in direct sunlight or you have less than 400 watts of solar, it'll be slower to get this motor charged up. All right, so that about does it for our video on the Travel S with the Laguna 290. If you're interested in other electric outboards, we've got videos on Remigo, ePropulsion, Torqeedo Travel XP. We also have a great comparison video between Torqeedo and ePropulsion motors. We'll link a bunch of those in the description below. If you're interested in purchasing one of these electric outboards, you can do so in our online store. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below or reach out to us directly. Thanks for watching and happy electric boating.